Hi everyone, welcome to Structured Mess, a podcast series where we discuss the messiness of the marketing world and how to build some method to this madness. Today we are talking about the pain of scaling your marketing efforts, the side that you don't really see on social media, be it publishing your own work, building teams from ground up, or sort of consulting inside big companies. Scaling is messy and full of struggles that rarely get spoken about. And my guest for that today is Tommy Walker. He was the first marketing hire at Shopify. Hi, Tommy. He has led teams at QuickBooks. He runs his own agency and consults companies like LinkedIn. And we are going to get into the hidden struggles of growth, the fears that come with ambition, and the battles that never go away, no matter how big you get. So, Tommy, before we get into the questions, I'd really love for you to introduce yourself. A very warm welcome to you. Why don't you share a
Yeah.
little bit about yourself?
Let's see. So I want to clarify too, it's Shopify Plus that I was the first marketing hire at.
All right.
Really good times, but over on the enterprise division is where I started
Right.
working over there, which was really great. What else can I say? I started as a freelancer, moved from freelancer to agency, agency to scale up to enterprise, and from enterprise to consultant. So I've kind of seen a huge gambit of how this world works over the last I don't know, 20 years or so. And
Yeah.
it's been really neat. It's been a really great adventure. A couple other things about me. I focus a lot on narrative design now is where I've been spending a lot more of my time. I come from an acting background. I went to a conservatory in New York before I ever got into marketing. And I've only more recently started marrying those two worlds in the way that I teach.
Right.
Um, because it's a completely different perspective. I think, than what's a lot of out there. Um, and my whole life right now revolves around telling stories. In my free time, I also run a Dungeons and Dragons campaign for my kids and their friends. So it is a lot of fun. But I'm constantly telling stories and developing collaborative storytelling in almost every aspect of my life, which is kind of neat and it's the practice of it all is really fun to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Also love Dungeons and Dragons, by the way. Beautiful. Uh,
Awesome, awesome.
yeah. So, as you mentioned, you have seen it all. You have seen scaling from a lot of angles, a lot of different places, your own work. You've led big teams, you've done consulting. But what I'm curious about, or what I really want to know about, is that social media, or in
Yeah,
this case, LinkedIn, as we talked about in the call we had before, which really, really annoys me, is that it makes scaling look like it's all champagne and high fives.
yeah,
It just makes it look like it's so rosy and so easy. And if you're not achieving it, oh my God, what are you doing, right?
yeah.
But the reality of it is that scaling is messy as hell. At least that's what I think. I'm sure you'll agree. So let's
Oh
start
yeah.
there. Let's start. What do you see on social media platforms like LinkedIn, and what you have experienced in being in the trenches, and sort of how like personally how scaling feels like a pure theater performance compared to the real
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the biggest part, right? You said performance, and I think a lot of what we do, and myself included, so I'm not gonna like point fingers and say like, oh, everybody else. Like it's very performative.
Yeah,
Um and there's a certain degree of that makes a lot of sense, right? Like we all are on LinkedIn to try and sell something, right? And I think
absolutely.
that that's one of those things that either we see embraced or we see a lot of people becoming more unhinged on LinkedIn, which I really like, right? I really
Yeah, yeah.
enjoy that. And I don't know if I'm like the best person to answer this question, to be honest with you, because my posts don't get a lot of impressions, right? They don't get a lot of, I mean, I get some engagement, but the engagement that I personally get, I think is a lot more high signal because there are plenty of times where I am not playing the algorithm.
Right.
Um, that's one of the things. Like I don't always have the strongest hooks, right? I
Hmm.
don't always go wide. I don't like sharing a lot about my personal life. I personally like to share more knowledge based stuff,
Right.
um, and that makes it a lot harder, right? I think that
Yeah.
makes it a lot harder. I think what's happening with LinkedIn right now, especially, is becoming a lot more. authentic,
Yeah.
maybe. I think some of the more unhinged things that I put out there.
Yeah.
There was one time I generated an image of it was Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart and the Pope uh, smoking a blunt together, right?
I've seen that.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
that got way more engagement than I ever possibly did on any of the education-based stuff. And I think that that's just because like I think what's happening there is it's just an environmental shift, right? I think some
Yeah.
of what scaling is now, it does have to be a little bit more personal. Um,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know how well I can answer this question, to be honest with you. Um,
No, but I do
I
think
think
that
what's
you're making, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think what's really interesting, and this is not something that I'm doing because I don't have a ton of employees, but I think what's really interesting, there are a handful of people that I think do this really well and do the
Mm-hmm.
education-based thing really well. Kevin Indig does a really great job of this. He's been scaling pretty well. My favorite founder-led growth on LinkedIn, Peter Caputa, I think
Mm.
he's doing a fantastic job. And what's really interesting about watching these folks, and I know Peter in particular is very vocal about how they've gone all in for DataBox on really doing the scaling aspect on LinkedIn, is
Right.
that it can be a lot higher signal
Hmm.
for those who are really doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that he talks to a lot of people. He does a lot of DMs. And I think that's the part that a lot of people miss is that scaling, and maybe I mean maybe we cut some of the stuff before this. I don't know if you how much cutting
Yeah.
you do,
Yeah.
but I think scaling is actually really unscalable, if that makes
Mm.
sense. I
Mm.
look at I've seen a lot of state of algorithm reports, um, and uh, and I think what I see in that what the algorithm starts to favor you
Mm.
when you are engaging in the platform, right? People
Right.
save your stuff. You're
Right.
commenting on other people. You're DMing a lot, right? And that is actually really unscalable.
Unsustainable. Yeah.
But when your posts are starting to um, become a lot more visible and
Mm.
more visible to the people who are you're giving signal to,
Right.
right? Like people who are in that same little bubble as you,
Right.
which LinkedIn has all of that information.
Yeah.
People you're DMing that has all that information. Um, I think scaling is unscalable, right? You have to do the unscalable behaviors if you're going to get the scalable results.
Correct. Right.
Does that make sense? Is that's
I think
probably
it
a little
makes
bit
a,
better of track?
yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
needed to
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
warm up there a little bit, but
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that makes total sense. I think in the same line, as you said, that the shift is slow and gradual, but there is definitely a
yeah,
shift in what people are engaging with and what people actually want to see on the
yeah.
platform. And this is something I've also personally noticed where, apart from Surreal, which is one brand that I see showing up on my feed and people actually engaging with, what I've seen is that
Hmm.
a lot of people don't really prefer to see really standard templatized company posts
No,
where yeah, so yeah, I think people's behaviors are changing, but at the same time actually scaling, as you said, is very unscalable because you have to do the hard thing and actually get
yeah.
at it.
Well, and what's really interesting from the company perspective, and you're starting to see this a lot more than we ever did in the past, is that a lot of companies are now having employee programs. Now, when I started really looking at this stuff a lot more closely, initially it was like have somebody share a post and then all of your employees like it and like
Yeah.
even if they don't like it and they're not engaging on the platform at all. And what we're seeing a lot more of now is companies starting to invest in their employees building out their own platforms as well, which I think
Yeah.
is really neat. Somebody who does this on the consulting side, I believe this is part of what his offering, is Devin Reed, right? And he's
Right.
really good at this. He's
Yeah.
really, really good at this, teaching people how to um, spread that knowledge across the company. I
Hmm.
think the people who do a really good job of this, also the folks over at Ahrefs, right?
Right.
You see
Yeah.
Tim Solo and you see Ryan Law a lot out there,
Yeah.
um, creating this advocacy, but also this sort of but they're creating their own web or their own bubble or their own um, ecosystem, I guess would
Ecosystem.
be the
Yeah.
word that
Yeah.
I'm trying to go for. Um, and I think that that's really cool.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm seeing a lot more of lately too, is the scalability is not necessarily just getting reach in the platform and getting a lot of comments. It's
Right.
also having people within the company go across the board. And I want to give credit where credit is due too. John Bonini did a really good job of this with like teaching Peter Caputa and getting a lot more of the data box folks like building out this web. So
Right.
it's really cool to see this evolve, and it's really cool to see companies really investing in some cases, not all cases. I think there's a lot more work to do, but
Yeah.
companies really investing in their people to then get that spread and still do those unscalable things,
Agreed.
but
Agreed.
with more people doing it. So yeah,
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. As you said, HREF is the biggest example of, people just from different departments talking about different perspectives of their job within that particular company. And that
yeah,
absolutely works beautifully. But bouncing off of that, I actually have a question for you, which is
sure.
I think something that people do struggle with, especially marketers, where you talked about employee training programs, right?
Hmm.
We do often see that marketing folks are always sort of fighting for budget, fighting for seat at the table, and it feels like they're constantly trying to prove their worth, right? And I think that is also
Yeah,
something that you talk about in the narrative design toolbox, if I'm not wrong.
yeah.
But why is this translation of a creative idea or a marketing idea into business language that stakeholders actually understand? Why is it so difficult to do?
Uh, um, so let me see if I can find the most diplomatic answer to this question. Um, and I'm going to back this by research first. So I'm doing a lot of research for my newsletter now, really trying to make the case for narrative design and why this is necessary. So there are
Right,
two things. One, there was a piece of research done. I think it was last year. It was 2024, but I think the it still stands, right?
right,
LinkedIn and Edelman did a research study about thought leadership, and it found that about only 15% of B2B buyers believe that thought leadership out there is actually really good. Like there's really good
right,
thought leadership out there, right?
right.
High
Which
quality
is
content.
very, very surprising given how much people are investing in thought leadership.
Right, right. The second part of this, and there was another study done by Walker Sands that found that only 11% of leaders who are going into these non-traditional channels are um, they're going into YouTube and they're going into LinkedIn and they're going into, sponsored newsletters and TikTok and like non-traditional channels, which I think is
Right.
really funny.
Yeah.
Um, they found that their leaders, only 11% of them believe that narrative structure is really important to telling these non-traditional stories. So basically what that means is that there's this 89% gap of leaders who don't believe that narrative structure is an important thing to have success over the channels.
Right.
Taking a step back over to content marketers, what a lot of content marketers, I believe, from what I've seen, do not have a narrative language,
Right.
right? So what that means is like if I were to say, hey, our reader or viewer or listener or whatever, now you wouldn't use this language, but it's something that you would need to know, has
Right.
this super objective, right? What is
Hmm.
the super objective in any sort of storytelling? It's what does the character ultimately want by the time they reach the end of the story,
Right.
right? If we're not thinking in those terms, right? What's the big goal that they don't think that they can ever get, but what's the
Hmm.
big thing, right?
Right.
Then what is the central conflict? What's the major thing that's getting in their way? If we don't have that language, then we can't then tie it to things like, well, can we get them to repeat visit, right? Can we get them
Correct.
diving into more pages? Can we have them, consuming the content longer, retaining longer, right? If
Right.
we don't have that in mind, if we don't have that language in mind,
Hmm.
then it's really difficult to say something like, hey, if we really just think about what this reader wants at the end of the year, and then we design our content to bring people through this narrative,
Right.
um, and these are the metrics that we're going to see as we do it, um, then it becomes really, really difficult to like tie that, because a lot of content marketers, this is the part that I don't want to say, is like they rely on vibes, right? Content is
Correct.
created on vibes. Um,
Correct.
and you can't defend your choices, right?
Yeah.
If someone says, "Oh, I don't like this," right? You can't diagnose exactly what it is, specifically what they don't like.
I've been guilty of
If
that.
you Right. You can't educate the rest of the company on what it is that they're trying to do, right? More research, and I can't remember the exact study off the top of my head right now, but there's more research that supports that says 98% of leaders believe that storytelling is important to the overall success of the business. 60 something percent believe that it's going to drive more sales, and then a significant portion believes that they don't have the skills
Hmm.
internally to pull it
Right.
off.
Right.
But but 100% of leaders in this particular study, and it was like a study of over 300 people, 100% of the CEOs and the CMOs and the CFO, like that whole group, said they want the marketers to tackle the risk aversion aspect of it,
Hmm.
right? Because they are risk averse, and they want marketers to lead that conversation. But you
Right.
can't lead the conversation if you don't have the right language. So
Correct.
why don't more marketers have a seat at the table? It's because in B2B, especially B2B SaaS, we're so conditioned to be service based and at the bottom of the totem pole. And we really want to we feel like we constantly have to prove ourselves. Um,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
without having that language, we can't then translate that into business results. And there are a number of things, but ultimately we have to redefine what it is that effective content is.
Hmm.
It's not just traffic, leads, and sales. That's really blunt.
Yeah.
Um, it's also like, are we seeing these concepts that we're trying to seed in the market show up in our sales conversations and in what people are saying when they become leads?
Hmm.
Is this sentiment on social media the stuff that we're trying to seed? If
Right.
we have that language and we can start to translate that over to more business results, it
Right.
becomes a lot easier to
Hmm.
then go, this is the narrative that we're going to build, rather than, and what a lot of marketers say, and I've heard this almost my entire career, we need to do more storytelling. Okay, how and why? What's that going to lead to? I don't
Right.
know. My market research says that I need to do that, which, by the way, I did my own study of this. And I'm going to like move on from the question in just a second here. I did my own study, the State of Discontent report last year, and it found the majority of content marketers were saying that they don't do their audience research nearly enough,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So there's no way to create defensible strategies
Right.
if we don't have the ability to connect what we're saying we should
Right.
do to what we're actually doing. And if we don't have the language about narrative, we have no way
Right.
to teach the rest of the company, and we have no way to tie that to that. So I think a biggest problem of why we don't have a better seat at the table, why a lot of ideas are having a hard time getting bought into, so forth and so on, right? Is that we just
Right.
don't have the narrative language to then say, here's how we tie it all together.
Hmm. I think rather than moving on to the next question, I want to dive deeper here for a minute.
Sure.
And what I'm curious to know now is hypothetically, by not giving away the entirety of the narrative design toolbox,
Yeah.
if you had to guide a content marketer to make this transition,
Yeah.
what are some first steps that you would suggest?
Sure. So the main thing is talking to people, right? You have to
Hmm.
talk to people. So many
Right,
companies are like don't want to actually. They're like allergic to customer conversations.
right,
Um, but you have to talk to people. Um, and in those conversations, right, we're not trying to get things like, what are your problems, right? We ask people, hey, what problems do you have right now?
yeah,
What do you want, right? And it's like, well, everybody's going to give you a superficial answer of like, oh, I want more leads, I want more
Absolutely.
sales.
Yeah.
What we need to do in these conversations with our customers is try to understand what they value, what they fear, and what are their strategies for success. So that last part, right? Strategies for success um, is like when the stakes are high, what is the thing that they lean back on, right? So for
Right.
me, I believe that the best way to have like my best strategy for success is create signature work, right?
Right.
Create work that is so undeniably good that it's going to carry itself.
Right.
I think that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
What do I fear? I fear mediocrity. I fear people ripping off my work, right? What do I
Yeah.
value? Well, I value creativity, right? And I value craft and technique,
Right.
right? So there are questions that we can ask to get these answers out of our readers and our, viewers. When I say readers, I mean like audience, right? But I don't
Right.
like saying
Right.
audience.
Right.
Um, when we start to get that, we can start to frame, we have a better idea of how to frame what it is that we're actually creating.
Right.
But where we need to start after that, once we have that information, the first thing we really need to understand is what is the big, seemingly unobtainable goal, right? The super objective
Mm.
that they
Super
want to
objective.
achieve
Yeah.
by the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
What's their central conflict? What's getting in the way? Now, how can we take that and break it down into four different phases,
Mm.
right? So I believe very strongly in the four act structure of, movies in particular.
Yeah.
Um, how do we break that up into four different phases, and then what are the conflicts and objectives that show up in those four different areas to
Mm.
create the phases of their story, and then how
Right.
do we break that up into three more parts? So
Mm.
now we've got monthly, we've got quarterly, and then we've got yearly of the
Right.
story that we're trying to tell, and we can build a much longer narrative, but we
Mm.
have to understand what it is that we're trying to do and how conflicts and objectives unify all of the different pieces.
Right.
A metaphor that I like to use right now is what a lot of content marketers are doing is ripping the pages out of their favorite book, plastering them up on the wall, and telling their audience, "Hey, you figure it out," right?
Right. Right.
But if we have this understanding of what are their objectives, what are their conflicts, and there are a handful of other things that we could look at. Um,
Mm.
suddenly, blog posts, newsletters, emails, videos, podcasts, like all of it can play a role in creating this ecosystem that is
Right.
all towards piece by piece trying to solve this bigger problem. And
Right.
everything can reference back to things that happened before and foreshadow what happens comes next, right? We
Mm.
create setups and payoffs,
Right.
which then drives people deeper, right? This is where we get into drives people deeper,
Right.
gets them returning more, come back longer, retain longer, right? My goal is to get somebody opening 15 tabs by the time they're done
Right.
um, with a session, because if we don't have repeat visitors, we never get into the consideration set, right?
Right.
Now, I've seen this work very specifically. I've seen this work when we make very intentional choices around how we drive people through the experience. There was an experiment that I did once where it was when we were able to double the amount of pages viewed per session and double the amount of sessions done within a 60-day time frame. We were able to cut the time to sale in half. Right.
That's yeah, very
Think about
impressive.
that though.
Yeah.
Intuitively, somebody's being exposed to four times the piece, like four times the content.
Yeah. Correct.
So we
Correct.
cut the time to sale in half because they understand the entire journey a lot faster than they would if they
Right.
were to just happen to come across us from, an SEO blog post, or now it's, LMMs and
Yeah.
like so much of that stuff. Like we optimize as a field, as a practice, we optimize more for the surface, like how do
Mm.
we get ranked or how do we show up in
Yeah.
whatever, and we don't optimize for what happens when somebody gets there,
After. Yeah. Correct.
right?
Correct. 100%. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And you
Yeah.
can only do that if you understand how narrative structure, if you understand how narrative principles work, what their names, like how that single principle operates. Now you're able to like really hone in on that specific skill
Right.
and then use that to drive people further into an experience.
Right. Absolutely. So it's more so like sitting down and narrating a beautiful story to your customer versus giving them a really bad choose your own adventure book that leads nowhere.
Right, right. And having
Hmm.
massive gaps in it because it wasn't planned out that way,
Right, right. You just
you know?
wrote the chapters randomly. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Right.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. I think people are gonna have a lot of fun listening to this entire segment. I think I'm gonna
I
listen to
hope
it a
so.
couple of times myself. All right. So I think my next question to you would be we talked about scaling and the aspects of it you don't see on social media. We talked
Yeah.
about the challenges marketing team faces, but that was a very specific question on my end. What I want to know is, in this extensive, impressive career that you've had, what are some battles that you keep seeing again and again on loop that people face while scaling even global teams with multiple endless resources keeps facing
Yeah.
again and again and again when it comes to scaling.
There's never enough resources. There are,
Right,
there are, even on the global side, like when I've done global content, and managed content across multiple, markets, there's never enough resources. There's never enough people. There's just never enough, right?
right,
Um, because from a business perspective, everybody wants to have proper unit economics for the things that they're doing. So,
right.
uh, when I was at QuickBooks, they had cut a bunch of budgets, and then they were telling people, and I thought this was really interesting, is even though we were operating leaner, we need to lean into the turn, right? Like,
Mm,
we need to do more with less. That's just
right,
common across the board. There's no such thing as unlimited budgets or headcounts, right?
right,
Everybody's
right.
trying to cut resources across the board.
Yeah,
So I want to get that out of the way, right? Just because you're
yeah,
working for an enterprise, enterprises are they're much harder, I think, in some ways to get budget.
I
Um,
see.
because you have more layers of, if
Mm,
you've got a sales team and you've got a paid product team, and the paid product team can go, hey, or the paid marketing team, hey, we put in $5, we get $10 out. Or your
mm,
sales team says, we put in 20 dials and we get 5 sales, which I know a lot of salespeople would say that would be brilliant, but I digress. You get the idea.
yeah,
A
yeah,
CFO can go, hey, that's a lot more reliable than a content marketer going, well, this might take 6 months to rank.
yeah,
Right. Um, and that's why I think we need to be able to lead that conversation in the way that I've just talked about too.
yeah,
Um, can you bring me back to the original question, just because I wanted to set that context before
yeah,
we move forward? What are the challenges that I've seen over and over again?
yes,
That's part of it,
yeah,
right? That's a big part of it, is just having this sort of mentality of, if I have more budget, if I have more people, if I have whatever, if I had more flexibility, if they will just let me do
yeah,
YouTube, then I could show you, I could prove to you. Um, and it's a lot of asking for permission,
yeah.
right?
I've heard that
Um,
a couple of times myself.
yeah, yeah. And and this is like, again, there's like this generational trauma when it comes to B2B marketing in particular,
Yeah,
where this is the case, right? Like, a lot of us have been beaten into this idea, into submission.
yeah,
Um, and I think that that's part of it. But the other part of it, and this is something that I've been doing a lot more research on lately, this is something I just found within the last couple of weeks, is that there was this research done by Forbes, right? I'm going to always come back to, there was a study done by, because I'm a nerd for this stuff. There was a study done by Forbes where they found out that 50% of CMOs in the study weren't even involved with the strategic conversation, right? And
oh,
which, like, holy cow, that's ridiculous,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, and another one is from 2023 to 2024, CEOs and CMOs. It was 90% of CEOs in 2023 saying that they felt that marketers were doing, CMOs were doing a good job of communicating what ROI was, to the rest of the org, right? That
Mm-hmm.
dropped down to 70% in 1 year,
From 90 to 70.
from 90 to 70,
That's
right?
insane.
And then in that same time frame, there was, uh, I think it was the CMOs were all saying that they felt like the rest of the organization had a solid understanding or shared understanding of what uh like the marketing ROI was, right?
Mm.
And that declined year over year. It was that declined like 9%. It was only like 30%, right? By the time it was all
That,
said and done, only 30% were saying that they felt like the organization had a clear understanding. So what's
right.
really interesting is this is stuff that we don't, on the ground level,
Yeah.
we don't see those conversations,
Yeah.
right? Those conversations are happening behind closed door. And the rest of the data starts to support this when you start seeing that the average CMO's tenure has been, is like 2.5 years to 3.5 years, right? And that's been declining over years. There are plenty of Fortune 500 companies who don't even have a CMO anymore
CMO. Yeah.
because the CEO just doesn't get it, right? They're
Yeah.
not aligned in the boardroom. And if they're not aligned in the boardroom, how the heck are we ever going to get our stuff done, right?
Correct.
Going back to that original conversation, that original stat of 100% of leaders said they want their marketers to lead the conversation and educate the company.
Yeah.
Well, if we're able to take that level of ownership and say, okay,
Mm.
this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, this is how it's going to work. Let me de-risk the investment as much as possible.
Yeah.
Um, all of that. Now we're helping our CMO, right?
Mm.
We're helping CMOs that might be having issues behind closed doors that we're not going to see
Correct.
have the conversations with the top brass, um, and help them get a better seat
Mm.
at the table. That's just
Right.
something we don't see,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
instead, we're
Right.
going, hey, Mark, hey, CMO, can I do this stuff? Can I get the budget for headcount? Or, can we do more experiments or things like
Mm.
that? And they're saying, we just don't have the ability to do that. A good
Yeah.
portion of them are saying that because they're already having tough conversations behind the scenes.
Right. So I think it's sort of just at the end of the day, again, ties back to rather than being a passive person in this entire conversation, how do you frame it up in a language that the business understands? Again, the narrative
Right,
design, and frame it up in a
right,
way that they understand and actually de-risk it, as you said.
right. Yeah, I mean that's
Hmm.
the biggest part is the risks need to be de-risked. Like the
Right.
investments need to be de-risked.
Right.
I'm gonna go nerdy on another stat if that's all right for a second.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so so going back to that Walker Sand study that I was talking about before,
Hmm.
they were finding the one that said only 11% of leaders believe that narrative structure is important. Um, what we're seeing in that study is 90, I think it was 96 or 98% of them said that they're either doing or exploring these non-traditional channels like LinkedIn, thought leadership, and YouTube, and et cetera.
Right.
But it was just under half that said they have the ability, they have a solid understanding of how it's going to produce results that a CM or CEO will care about. And it was
Right.
42% said that they even have the tools to measure this stuff. So what we've seen in the past, and I've seen
Hmm.
this almost my entire career, is, a CEO going, and a CFO, more importantly, going, okay, well, how is this going to produce results? And
Right.
they don't see results after a certain period of time. Like, oh, we'll try it, we'll experiment with it. We're only getting a couple hundred views on this thing,
Yeah.
right?
Shut it
What the
down.
heck? Why? Well, we're going to
Yeah.
pull the plug on that investment.
Yeah.
The only reason I think that there's more of an investment being made in this stuff now is because everybody's panicking, right? With
Yeah.
AI overview and AI, AI mode, and the whole level of discovery of how people are encountering this stuff,
Yeah.
or being exposed to our work is totally different now. And I think a lot of leaders are finally understanding that we need to, expand our,
Yeah.
spread our wings a little bit. We have to get
Yeah.
more reach
Right.
because the old playbook doesn't work.
Hmm.
But what we're seeing is that we're still having the same old measurement problems. So I think that just ends up causing more friction, or will
Hmm.
cause more friction in the long run,
Right.
because leadership's going to go, I have no idea, I don't know what the investment's going to look like.
Yeah.
How is this paying off? but we have nothing else to fall back on.
Right. So
So
let's just do it.
right.
Yeah.
And if what 89% of them don't believe that narrative structure is important to telling a story on these channels,
Yeah. That's kind of
and that's the
concerning. Yeah.
right, and that's the
Yeah.
thing that keeps people hooked and engaged.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge problem. And just
Yeah.
to throw a few more stats out, right? Because again, I'm a huge nerd about this. Most YouTube channels die after 22 videos. They don't make it past 22 videos. Most podcasts don't make it past, I can't remember the exact stat, but and a lot of newsletters don't make it past 3 months, right?
Right.
So podcast 3 episodes, I believe it was. Um,
Right.
so these channels can be really difficult to invest in. And
Yeah.
if you're not seeing results, say you're paying an agency, $5,000 to $10,000 a video for the ones that are worth their salt,
Yeah.
right? And that's not paying off immediately.
Yeah.
Like, where's that
And
money
that's
going?
concerning. Correct. Correct.
Right,
Correct.
right,
Absolutely.
right. And you can't communicate, hey, this is, we tried, but this is why it's not working. Like, we don't have the stakes set right now, or we're not,
Right.
we don't have competing values that are happening at the very beginning.
Right.
Um, we're not doing that. Why are people disengaging?
Hmm.
It's because there's no structure. There are no principles behind the scene, because a lot of content marketers didn't start as content marketers,
Yeah.
right? This was not stuff, I know a ton of journalists, and I know journalists, and I met a poet recently. Someone was a poet before they ever got into this.
Yeah.
Structure and principles weren't part of that job,
Yeah. Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So how are we ever supposed to say that and communicate that and then tie
Hmm.
it to business metrics to
Right.
then, go back to de-risk the investment,
Yeah.
right? So
I, I think what
I
you
think I
just
over answered the
explained.
question there, but yeah.
But it was beautiful, because it sort of just tied into the next question that I was going to ask you,
Mm,
that you almost answered here, which was that people assume that scaling means a lot of their problems are going to be fixed. They'll get more budget,
right.
get more people, they get more tools, right? And but anyone, as you said, from your experience, that anyone who has been inside long enough knows that it just sort of changes the flavor of the pain, and
Yeah.
that's what that is. So. My question to you was going to be that what are some of these struggles that sort of seem to never go away? And I think you
Yeah.
did answer most of it.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest issue. Like the whole thing I'm staking my career on right now
Right.
is this idea that if we don't have this language, then we're one, not going to create as good a work as we thought we thought we are creating, right?
Right.
Again, only 15% of B2B buyers believe that there's good thought leadership out there, which is
Yeah.
massive on its own.
Yeah.
Um, but then the other part of that is like, okay, well, how can we communicate like the stuff that we want? Um, but the other part of that, right? What's really great, and I don't want to be like all doom and gloom, right? I have to give credit where credit is due. There
Yeah.
are people who are seeing light at the end of the tunnel on this one. There's a lot of people who are going, yeah, my leadership's more willing to invest. They see that we have to. They're finally listening. We have a better seat at the table.
Yeah.
Um, their hands are being forced,
Yeah.
right? But we're at the start of a new paradigm
Yeah.
where we can lead the conversation if we stop relying on vibes,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
Now, the other thing that I've heard recently, and I absolutely love this, um, is the reward for good work is more work,
Right. Yeah. That's
right?
been going around
Which
quite a lot.
is
Yeah.
which is great. Like we need to
Yeah.
have more work, and
Yeah.
if we've done good work and we can make the case, we've made the case, and we see, the signs of success, signs of life, right? If
Yeah.
you're saying, hey, this is the thing that we're trying to measure right now, we're looking for our leading indicators are going to
Yeah.
be longer scroll depths and more pages per session and more return visits, right?
Yeah.
Things that are actually effective,
Yeah.
um, beyond surface level traffic leads and sales. Um, then I think it's much easier to get more investment because
Yeah.
now you're saying, hey, I have a really solid hypothesis on how we're going to communicate this narrative,
Yeah.
right? Here's the narrative that we're building. Here are the things that I'm looking for out of this. You report back in a month and like, hey, look, all of these things started to pay off, right?
Yeah.
They're invisible to the reader, the viewer, or the listener,
Yeah.
but when you know
Yeah.
what that looks like, then you start to move forward. Now, think about this from a podcast perspective, right? Because you are now running a podcast, right?
Yeah.
If you have episode to episode a longer running narrative,
Hmm.
right? Each piece will flow into the next,
Yeah.
right? What do you think that will do for your retention rate,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Instead of just saying, hey, let's book whatever guest we can get, it's like,
Yeah.
here's the story that we want to tell. Now let's bring in people who are
Who
able
are
to
best at
support that
telling?
part of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now there's like a subconscious reason somebody will want to come back because when you say, hey, when you tune in next week, or we've got a guest coming in next week and this is what they talk about, and our guest before that actually talked about something that you're building off of right now.
Right.
There's a lot more planning that can go into that will
Yeah.
give your listeners like more reasons to tune in,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a reason why we will stay up late way past our bedtimes, and say to our spouses, like, or our significant others, like, just one more episode. I know you got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but like, let's just do one more episode.
Yeah.
Um, because like, it's so good right now. And
Yeah.
it's like screenwriting 101, a lot of the stuff that these screenwriters are using
Yeah.
to keep you hooked and to put you on a cliffhanger. So if we understand that,
Yeah.
and we're using that language behind the scenes, it
Hmm.
makes it like we're programmed to do this, right? But I don't think content
Absolutely.
marketers should be passive observers of media,
Yeah.
right? Like we have to understand why it works, how it works, and then we can start to use these principles to drive people deeper. Anyways, again,
Yeah.
that's a lot of talking, but
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is the idea that I picked up from, like, was compelled to think deeper on from one of your posts that you made, what you just made, that what you just said, is that we are not, absolutely not allowed to be passive observers of media. And you said that, whenever you're working on something, your entire feed, your entire algorithm from YouTube to any other social platform that you're using is just about that stuff, which is an idea I was really, really obsessed with, and it really hit a nerve. So I 100% agree with you there.
awesome.
Uh, okay. I think my final question to you for the day is that if scaling is as difficult as we talked about and comes with a lot of thorns and pains during the way, and if we don't see that side enough and often on social media, then what is an honest advice that you will give someone who is going to step into the entire chaos of marketing for the first time or is relatively new?
Yeah. Um, don't pay attention to what people are saying out there, right?
Right.
Not the education aspect of it, right? Like, pay attention to me, follow my work, sign up for my newsletter, right? Like do all that.
Shout out.
But
Yeah.
shout out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, linked in my profile, right? But so many conversations are overinflated when we're trying to make ourselves look good. And it's human instinct, right? It's a very
Yeah.
primal thing to see a graph that goes up and to the right and then go, oh, that person has it all figured out. And it's like,
Yeah.
I saw, I'll give you an example. I was working with a client and they saw a carousel on LinkedIn that was like how we create 50 posts a month, right?
Right.
And it was great, right? It was a really great, compelling, piece. They shared it with their team, and they were like, "Okay, here's how we get to it," and it's about process, right?
Hmm.
And ultimately,
Yeah.
it was about having like a really solid editorial process or operations behind the scenes. But what wasn't said, right? And what I know to be true because I knew people on the team who were doing this is, and I did a little digging myself, is this company has like seven different authors, right?
Right.
And they pay them anywhere between $600 to $1,000 per article,
Right.
right? And they do have a really strong editorial process. That's great, but they're spending 20 to $30,000 a month
Yeah.
in getting those many pieces. And what's interesting is when I asked in that comment thread,
Hmm.
right, how many people do you have and how much money are you spending? I just got a like, but no
Right.
response to that. And it's
Right.
like
Right. Right.
we see stuff like that. And I mean, I'm just saying that because I saw it firsthand. We
Yeah.
see stuff like that, and then the primal part of our brains go, "Oh, we got to do that too," and
Yeah.
we might share it around. But then, like, without doing just a little bit more digging to find
Yeah.
out, hey, how feasible is this actual thing?
Yeah.
Um, it's really easy to compare what we're seeing for our own success versus what other people are saying, but not giving
Correct.
all the right information. They're not,
Correct.
you know, we're all out there going like, look at what I can do. And it's like, yeah, maybe like, but nobody's going to talk about the hard stuff that's happening behind the scenes. So
Yeah.
that's my advice is like do a little bit of digging before something looks too good to be true
Yeah.
because typically speaking it is and um it's only in that person's best interest to like overinflate what they see,
Yeah.
what they're seeing for success.
For sure. And I think tying that sentiment sort of to an experience that I have felt firsthand when I was working as a freelancer is that clients do sort of sometimes, I think it also goes true for companies, founders, like if you have a smaller firm and you have founders, a lot more involved in your marketing, is that they will see a carousel like that downloaded and be like, hey, if these guys are able to do it with XYZ amount of team members, why are we not able to do it with XYZ capital? But as you said, it sort of plays into the best interest of that person to post it and frame it in a way that it feels much more super heroic than it actually
Yeah.
is that we were able to do this with this much and in this way. But the truth is often quite different.
Yeah, well, and I said this at the very beginning too, is like everybody's on LinkedIn and a lot of people are on Twitter just to sell each other something,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for
right?
sure.
Like,
Yeah. So,
so
yeah, I think it does tie into the idea then to go ahead and explain to your client or your founder or your fellow marketer, having the right language to explain to them why it works or why it does not work. The
right.
entire thing we talked about. But yeah, Tommy, this has been really refreshing and very, very fun. And I had a blast digging into everything that we said. Thank you very, very much for being so open and bringing a really good perspective to our conversation and all the stats. I really appreciate them. I really know for a fact that our listeners will, take away something really meaningful from our conversation. So
Awesome.
thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening, if you enjoyed this episode, please do interact with us. Give Tommy a follow, check out our other videos, and I will catch you in the next conversation. Thank you for tuning in. Bye bye.